welcome to Moneylife. This is Sucheta Dalal. Today we are going to discuss insider trading. You know what insider trading is, right? It is somebody who has access to price sensitive information which they use to trade before everybody else in the market gets to know about it in order to either make a profit or avoid a loss. This happens all the time because people close to companies get access to information and the temptation to trade is so high. Now, the regulators around the world work very hard to try and block insider trading. They have rules, they have regulations, which they keep refining. Now, the US had made insider trading illegal way back in 1934. Yet, a study says that only 25% of insider trading is actually ever detected or prosecuted. In India, in 92, there was a bit of a joke. The president of the Bombay Stock Exchange at an international conference was asked by someone, what is the extent of insider trading in India? And his answer was, there is no other kind. It didn't mean that everybody is an insider, obviously, but every last person who got a tip those days on Dalal Street, they thought that they had this hot information that nobody else has. So even when they came in late, either they thought it's going up a lot more. Everybody actually believed he was an insider. So after the Securities and Exchange Board of India came into being, got its statutory teeth, we had our first set of insider trading regulations. Even in India, the regulators have been working at improving them. So what is my video blog about this time? It is about what happens when you're caught. What happens when the regulator catches you under these regulations, prosecutes you, and wants to punish you? Is it effective? How effective is it? Are the orders uniform? So we had been looking at insider trading cases. In fact, some time ago I had written an article saying, is there even a method to this madness of prosecution? Because there are contrary orders, there are orders of Sebi which are overturned by the Securities Appellate Tribunal, then they go to the Supreme Court, sometimes they are overturned over there. So what, as it is, insider trading is notoriously difficult to prove. How do you prove who's connected, who's an insider? And these days it's even more difficult because of social media. So obviously with this being so tough, you need a uniform set of regulations, which they have done. In 2013, Sebi realized that lots of loopholes in their law, so they set up a committee under Justice Sodhi. This was a big overhaul of regulations in 2015. After that, there's been some tinkering, but more or less the Sodhi regulations have stood. So what Moneylife Foundation, which is a connected NGO, not-for-profit organization engaged in financial literacy, take a look at it. I'm putting it up there. If you're not a member, please click on that link and become a member because it's useful to you. We talk about what mistakes you make and things that are good for you as an investor or a saver or consumer of financial products. So Moneylife Foundation decided, let's study these orders and look at all the Sebi orders, SAT orders, maybe some High Court and Supreme Court orders. Obviously, can't look at all of them. So we sought help from Advocate Ravichandra Hegde, who is an expert in securities law and partner of Pariman Securities. He and his team helped a couple of interns who worked with us to look through landmark cases on insider trading and check how the law was evolving. Because remember, you can have a set of regulations, they get crystallized only after a set of judgments which says whether something is okay or not and create landmark orders or precedents. So what did this study find? This is what this time's video blog is about. And believe me, it can happen to any of you. You can get pulled up because you've got something on WhatsApp, so you need to know a little bit about insider trading regulation. What the study concluded after looking at dozens of landmark orders is that the law is evolving in a haphazard manner, sometimes due to new situations and cases, but often due to contrary positions taken in similar cases at Sebi level itself and then at the appellate levels. Consequently, insider trading verdicts, except in the most standard brazen violations, are prone to arbitrary outcomes. In fact, we have said that you probably need to go back to the regulatory discussion table and refine things a little more. The problem we discover starts with Sebi. It's not limited to the regulator, as I said, happens at all levels. But at Sebi, instead of adopting a uniform approach, Sebi's whole-time members often analyze cases previously decided by another whole-time member. Remember, whole-time member is at the number 2 level and they have the final say on most cases. Now, one whole-time member looking at an insider trading case, even if it's similar to another, may not necessarily go by what he says. He'll try and fine-tune it to look at fine distinctions between that situation and this to come up with a divergent or different verdict. What does this do? It causes confusion. Because if the order is against the person, if you're let off, nobody's bothered. But if it goes against you, then you want to appeal because you say, why did that guy get let off? Why not me? So you go to the appellate forum. There, the same story repeats. This causes confusion among investors, more litigation, and every time Sebi orders are struck down, there is embarrassment. And this is happening all the time. In fact, as recently as 19th April 2022, the Supreme Court issued an order in what we call the PC Jewellers case or Balram Garg versus Sebi, where its decision said the extent of circumstantial evidence, and Sebi has jargon for it, I will come to that a little later, the extent of circumstantial evidence that can be used to decide the case has to be of a much higher order. Now, because of this case, looks like bunch of Sebi cases that have been decided earlier may go out of the window. So what did our study, and I'm saying our study, Moneylife Foundation, it's a separate entity, but I'm saying our study examines key concepts, first of all, for starters, like what forms insider trading. Now, what is generally available information on the basis of which you trade, annual reports, notifications to stock exchanges, then that is not insider trading. What you need to have to be an insider is unpublished price sensitive information, which nobody has, not a research report. But this can come to you on a WhatsApp. Again, just merely possessing UPSI makes you an insider, but do you need to act on it for Sebi to go after you because some trigger is held? Sebi rules say one thing, orders have said another thing. So legal provisions, our study finds, are incongruent with the rulings and need further clarity. Social media, like I said, new set of challenges because it comes into what is a connected person. Earlier, connected person would be an employee, would be family members of the key persons who knew about maybe a takeover that's going to happen, or results that are going to be announced, a bonus declaration. But today, you can share something on social media and everybody, say on Facebook, who's your friend or following you on Twitter, knows in advance probably, you have a signal and they trade on it. It's happened many times. These are also now called connected persons. So this is a new definition which Sebi has done a lot of good work and drilled down into. It happened in Pallet Technologies, Deep Industries, Lux Industries. Good work done by the regulator and makes a whole sea of difference between how unpublished price sensitive insider information is transmitted. The study also looked at landmark cases involving transactions with corporate actions, sale of shares of an investment company, or where somebody has to sell shares. These are landmark cases because somebody sold shares because they had to within a deadline, and Sebi issued an ex parte order and blocked their bank accounts. Person finally won the case. At what stage are you an insider? At what stage does this become unpublished price sensitive information? You want to look at our study. It is up on Moneylife Foundation's website. It is freely available. It will make a lot of sense for you, some of you, to look at it. Up there, we're going to put the link. The study now has identified two key issues which Sebi needs, according to us, to re-examine regulations to achieve a rational and uniform approach. One of them is whether there is motive, whether you intended to profit or avoid a loss. That, there's a Latin term for it called mens rea. The second is, like I said, circumstantial evidence, or it's Sebi's jargon, preponderance of probability, or the role of body of circumstantial evidence in establishing or proving allegations that insider trading has actually happened. Now, let's examine both of these. Motive or mens rea is the first we'll look at. Sebi regulations say motive or mindset of the insider is not relevant to establish insider trading charges. We've had cases where heads of industry have somebody operating for them. That person inadvertently, by mistake, trades during a period when no trades are allowed, apologizes, but the person whose shares are traded, their name is dragged through the mud. So is mens rea important? The Sodhi committee recommendation actually said that there will be some well-reasoned caveats while imputing liability. So you can't take an absolute stand that motive or mens rea doesn't matter at all. But Sebi apparently chose to disregard this in its regulation and adopted a principle of absolute liability. You've traded in that window, you're going to be punished, or you have to settle charges. And charges have been settled because Sebi has been very rigid about this. It's a little strange because it has its own contrary interpretations, but on this it's rigid. So led to contrary rulings, obviously. There's a case of Rakesh Agarwal versus Sebi where the appellate tribunal ruled that motive must be taken into account. This has been reiterated in at least 3 cases. One famous one is called Chandrakala versus Sebi, PVP Ventures, Shreyas Tambe. Now all these, we have links to them. If you are interested, look at our text article at Moneylife. You will see the links. You can look at the orders. Some of you may be interested. The Bombay High Court also, in a case involving Cabot International Capital, and the Supreme Court in Sebi versus Shriram Mutual Fund ruled that motive cannot be an essential factor to determine insider trading. So that now, because of the SC orders, like a settled law, and the person can be punished. Our study still feels that the Sodhi committee intended motive and intent to have a role. So Sebi needs to go back to the drawing board and relook at it. This would apply when you get UPSI, like I said, or when someone else has acted on your behalf. Now let's look at the next one, which was part of the Supreme Court order in April. Preponderance of probabilities. Put it simply, circumstantial evidence in establishing guilt. So Sebi's market surveillance system usually throws up system-based alerts. That's how it decides who is likely to have done insider trading. So before a big corporate action, if Sebi's online real-time market surveillance system throws an alert, then it begins to investigate that after a corporate announcement is made. Drills it down a little bit and goes after people. Our study says that in such cases, this leads to, if you just go on the basis of those alerts and spread your net wide, it leads to imposition of severe hardship restrictions on business and livelihood, and this has happened in some ex parte orders. In fact, one was issued in the middle of a lockdown and it was ultimately struck down, right? So little more application of mind is required. Our study argues that Sebi has invariably relied on a negative connotation of the phrase preponderance of probabilities in deciding things. So what happened in this landmark case of PC Jewelers or Balram Garg? The Supreme Court in April said Sebi had relied on a family connection based on a common residential address to establish insider trading and impose stringent penalty. Now, the Apex Court decided that the allegations need to be backed by a much higher burden of proof because apparently there was a partition in this family several years ago and Sebi had ignored that. The study of, so like I said, much more work is required. The study of landmark insider trading orders suggests that insider trading regulations need to have uniformity, reduce unintended harassment and litigation, and also the embarrassment of being struck down. So if there is a proper order at the Sebi level, it's less likely to be appealed. Today, because of contrary orders giving room to both sides, those who have got away, they probably don't need to appeal. But there's one case where a person who got away also appealed to remove the stigma. So remember, people want to litigate if they think they have a chance. Sebi's job is to reduce that because it doesn't make sense. It needs to have consistent, uniform approach. Our study believes this has to start at the regulator. So before you set up a committee and start looking at all regulations again, ensure that your officers who are investigating, adjudicating, and the whole time members are not trying to be creative but are trying to give sensible orders in a very difficult to prove area, which is insider trading. If you agree, study it a little more and share this video blog with people. Subscribe to us so that you get more information regularly if you're a trader in the market. Thank you.